This event has grown into the biggest pro-life event in the world, but if you turned on your TV this weekend, you just saw stories about snowdrifts and snowball fights. The liberal media is afraid to cover the March for Life. They're afraid to talk about the reality of abortion, afraid to debate the facts, afraid to look scientific fact in the eye, afraid to talk about the trauma abortion causes to the mothers, afraid to meet the question face to face of whether an unborn baby is a human life and thus whether abortion kills. The mainstream media are cowards. They would rather cave to the interests of liberal politicians, parrot the cowardly talking points that avoid a frank discussion about abortion. They would rather cover important topics like whether or not the snow is cold or whether or not restaurants will close during the storm than have the courage to give voice to the voiceless. But this didn't stop the faithful. Thousands still showed up to the March for Life, and back with me today to discuss is Communications Coordinator from Concerned Women for America, Janae Stracke. Janae, great to have you here.
Always great to be here.
Now, you missed the D.C. shutdown. The march happened right beforehand on Friday. So tell us about it. What was the atmosphere like there?
It was incredible. You know, I was really pleased with the turnout. You said we had thousands, tens of thousands of people there. And I was really pleased with that. Some of the media was quoting it and saying that it was a smaller crowd, which they weren't record-breaking numbers this year due to the storms, lots of people that weren't able to travel in. But there were blocks and blocks and blocks of people there from all over the place, all walks of life, all different ages, and there was a sense of excitement there. So I thought it was a huge success.
Right, the mainstream media will do anything to minimize the march, to make it seem like it was smaller than it was. But tell us, what were the weather conditions like to experience while you were there? How did people cope with that?
Well, hand warmers, coats, you know, just like any other year, it's kind of traditional for the March for Life to have yucky, cold weather, and people are used to that. They're ready, they're prepared, and they're out there for a reason, so the cold's not going to stop them.
Right.
It really actually didn't start snowing until about 1 p.m. or 2 p.m., so the timing was actually really good.
Good, and you know, there's warmth in numbers too, as well as strength in numbers, so I'm sure that contributed to it. Tell me a little bit about Carly Fiorina's speech. She was scheduled to be the featured speaker. We saw a little clip of what she said at the beginning. Tell me what the reaction was to what she had to say.
I think people responded really well. I mean, she speaks to the hope that we have for our future. You know, we've talked about needing a pro-life president with the legislation that we've been able to get passed, and then, of course, President Obama vetoed it. And a pro-life president would be a game changer for this community. And the polls have showed us that the American people are on the side of the pro-life community. The mindset has shifted, and we've got polls that show at least 80% of Americans want to see a change in abortion laws. Now, not all of them would agree with the extreme that I would, but they do agree that some abortion laws should be changed. And Carly Fiorina spoke to that. She said if she was president that she would make those changes, and I think that people are excited about our future.
Right, she talked a little bit, and this was one of my favorite parts, she talked a little bit about the consensus, that there is a consensus among the American people about abortion in some senses, that most Americans, a majority of American voters, think that we should restrict abortion when the baby can feel pain, and that why aren't we doing something about that when we're all in agreement, that the parts that we aren't in agreement on can come second, but right now let's focus on what we agree on and put that into legislation and put that into action. Another aspect that I thought was really significant this year about the March for Life was the Evangelical Participation. And we've talked before about this being a traditionally Catholic march, but this, I think, speaks to the growing pro-life sentiment in our nation, that Catholics and evangelicals joined together for this, to speak up for life because they know their voice is more powerful as a whole than separately.
Yes, exactly. And I think that it goes to show that, you know, the media wants to paint this as radicals and just a small group, but it really is the majority of Americans. This is not just a small religious group or segregated or extremists. These people are pro-life, they're pro-woman, males and females of all different denominations, different walks of life, and they are coming together because we want our voice to be heard. The polls are showing it, the people are saying it, now we're showing with action, and we want the government to listen.
Now, was there any talk while you were there about what's been happening at Planned Parenthood this year? I feel like one of the reasons this topic has been so huge this election cycle so far, and it's only just the primary, is because of the videos released by the Center for Medical Progress that showed inside abortion clinics where baby parts were being harvested. Was there any talk of Planned Parenthood's struggles or what's been going on there?
You know, I don't remember Planned Parenthood being specifically mentioned, but I think that that most definitely played into the crowd and the passion behind people because they're infuriated. This is heartbreaking to see, and they want to see change. They don't want their tax dollars going to fund Planned Parenthood. And I think more than anything, again, it comes back to the presidential election and Hillary Clinton being one candidate who supports Planned Parenthood and has the same views as President Obama, that abortion should be allowed at any time for any reason, and there are even a significant amount of the pro-choice community that would disagree with that. So I think that as this information has come out, it has opened people's eyes and the realization, and they are ready to step out and make a change. And so we're excited to see a field full of presidential candidates that are pro-life.
Right, and that's one of my favorite parts of this march, too, is the stories that aren't as traditional, that aren't just people who grew up in religious households or whose parents were pro-life or who came to the realization early on that scientific fact points to life being life at conception and have been pro-life forever. One of my favorite parts is hearing the stories of people who were formerly pro-abortion and how they've switched to being pro-life because of their personal experience. And I'm not sure if she was at the march this year, but last year I know, and the year before, Gianna Jessen was there. She talked about her mother tried to abort her multiple times. She survived an abortion, and that's made her such an advocate for the pro-life movement and talking from such a different perspective that she's not just using the same old talking points, and it brings more people to the pro-life movement because they relate to her.
Definitely, and you know, we have stories like that within Concerned Women for America as well. One of our state directors in Louisiana at a separate rally was able to share her story about having abortion at age 16 and why she did that, and because she felt like she didn't have any choice, and you know, so many different factors that played into that, and then became pro-life, came to know the Lord, and realized the impact, the negative impact that it had on her life and the choices that she was making. And so now she is pro-life and speaking out and is a supporter. And we have members of CWA who have been adopted, who were lives that were saved because their mothers chose not to have an abortion, and now they get to live. And those people rally on. And there are stories after stories of personal interactions that we've had, and it matters to these people. And that, I agree with you, it's so exciting to hear them.
All right, we're almost out of time, but what's next in the cultural battle for pro-life? You know, we hear about the legislation aspect a lot, but on Friday, on the anniversary of Roe v. Wade, we saw a video from pro-abortion celebrities really celebrating their abortions, and it was heartbreaking to see. What's next from the pro-life movement to counter that culturally?
Let your voices be heard, speak out, social media, grassroots, talk to your neighbors. You know, I've heard from a lot of people that saw the Center for Medical Progress videos but didn't think that they were real. That's a grassroots thing. You got to talk to your neighbors. If you're passionate about this and you care about it, then let your voice be heard, because we are the majority. So don't be afraid to make yourself known, and the more we speak out, the more we're going to see that change in our society.
And I think we saw that on Friday at the March for Life. Janae, I appreciate you coming on the program again. It's always great to see you. I'll talk.